Every day after school, an 8-year-old boy in a blue hoodie stood outside Buckingham Palace and saluted a royal guard who never responded. She never looked at him, never moved, never acknowledged that he existed. But he showed up anyway, rain or shine, cold or heat, always in the same spot, always with the same silent salute. People passed him by without a second thought, assuming he was just another kid playing games. He wasn't. He was saluting the only person who reminded him of someone he'd lost. And then one day, without warning, everything changed. The guard stepped off the platform, just one step, but for her, that was enough to break protocol, break tradition, and break the silence the boy had been living in. Because sometimes the smallest gestures carry the deepest weight, and sometimes one step forward speaks louder than a lifetime of standing still. Before we show you what happened next, tell us where you're watching from, and stay for the moment one soldier made history by simply moving. Corporal Elizabeth Hartley was known for one thing above all else: discipline. 35 years old, blonde hair tucked neatly under her bearskin hat, piercing blue eyes that never wandered from their mark. In a role designed for stillness, she was flawless. At home, her life was stripped of noise. No decorations, no clutter. One photo hung on the wall, her and her younger brother, both in uniform, taken just weeks before he was killed overseas. She never took it down. She just stopped looking at it. The medals they gave her for service were boxed away. The letter from the palace commending her conduct was folded once and stored in a drawer she never opened. She didn't cry anymore. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't speak unless ordered to. She wore the uniform not to be seen, but to stay stitched together. She had stood motionless for years, through heat waves, snow, protests, laughter, cruelty. But something about that boy was different. He didn't film her. He didn't giggle. He didn't even get too close. He just stood there, small, quiet, and broken in a way she knew too well. He saluted her with everything he had, and day after day she pretended not to notice. But each time, a little more of her resolve cracked. She had survived war zones without blinking, but somehow that boy's silent salute was beginning to reach a part of her she thought had been buried with her brother. Liam was 8 years old, and every day after school he came to Buckingham Palace. Same navy hoodie, same oversized backpack that sagged off one shoulder. He didn't run, he didn't talk, he just walked beside his grandmother, stopped at the edge of the gate, and stood at attention. Then he'd raise his right hand, fingers straight and sharp, and salute the same royal guard with the same quiet determination. No camera, no crowd, no need for anyone to notice. Except one person. Tourists brushed past him like he wasn't there. Some chuckled, others rolled their eyes, thinking it was just a boy playing soldier. But he never flinched, not once. And while Elizabeth Hartley never looked at him, never acknowledged him, she noticed everything. The way his hand trembled some days, like he was trying to be braver than his body would allow. The small, faded scar under his chin. The way he clenched his fists after every salute, as if bracing for something that never came. She'd seen men freeze in gunfire. She'd watched soldiers hold their breath as bombs fell nearby, but she hadn't seen this kind of bravery in a long time. The kind that doesn't ask to be recognized. The kind that shows up anyway. She didn't know why he came. She didn't know what made him salute her. But she felt it in her bones. This wasn't a game for him. This was something real, something heavy. Something that would break her silence long before her orders ever could. She didn't know his story yet, but she would. It was raining that afternoon. Not a soft drizzle, but a steady, cold downpour that soaked through clothes in seconds. Most tourists had already scattered for shelter, but Liam came anyway. No coat this time. Just the same navy hoodie, now drenched and sagging from the weight of water. His shoes were soaked through, but he walked with purpose, dragging his backpack behind him, and stopped at the same spot. His grandmother followed, but today something was different. A man was waiting at the gates, angry and loud. The grandmother argued with him, voice rising, words slipping out. Custody, court orders, he needs stability. Liam said nothing. He just stepped forward, raised his hand, and saluted. The motion wasn't as strong as usual. His hand shook. His knees buckled slightly. And then he stumbled. He caught himself barely, but the salute faltered. His arm dropped. He pressed his hand to his mouth to keep from making a sound. But it didn't stop the tears. His shoulders shook quietly, like someone trying not to fall apart in front of the wrong crowd. Elizabeth felt it before she saw it. A tightening in her chest. The twist of something old and buried forcing its way to the surface. Her rifle twitched. Her fingers curled slightly. And for the first time in years, she inhaled sharply and let go. She stepped down, one deliberate step forward, boots slapping the wet stone like a drum beat. The sound cut through the courtyard. Heads turned, phones lifted. The other guards shouted behind her, but she didn't hear them. She didn't care. She kept walking until she was eye to eye with the boy who had stood for her every day without asking for anything in return. She didn't say a word. She didn't break character. She simply raised her hand and saluted him. Because sometimes a soldier doesn't wait for orders. She moves when it matters. By nightfall, the clip had gone viral. 35 million views in under 12 hours. No edits, no music. Just raw footage of a soldier stepping off her platform in the pouring rain to return a child's salute. The title said it all. Royal Guard breaks protocol for crying boy. Comment sections flooded with disbelief, then admiration, then grief. She broke formation for a child. The line repeated everywhere, on news headlines, reaction videos, Instagram captions. TikTokers stitched it with tears in their eyes. Teachers cried. Veterans saluted their screens. Even people who didn't care about soldiers or tradition or history paused their scrolling to watch a soaked boy collapse into tears. And a soaked woman in red armor bend her knees and meet him with a silent answer. The frame said more than any speech could. A woman trained to ignore everything, weather, noise, mockery, had chosen not to ignore him. That one act turned a faceless guard into something else. Someone asked online, why did he come every day? What made her break the rules? It didn't take long before someone found out. A school counselor, a volunteer from a military family charity, a name connected to a case file. The boy's name was Liam. His father had died in Afghanistan. His mother had disappeared soon after. Some said addiction, others said abandonment. His grandmother became his guardian. She told a local paper that he never talked about it. Not directly. But he kept a folded photo in his backpack, his dad in uniform, saluting next to a palace guard. Every day after school, Liam went to that same courtyard to salute the soldier who looked the most like the one in the photo. He didn't know her. He never tried to. He just needed to believe someone still stood where his father once had. He didn't want attention. He didn't want to go viral. He just wanted to believe someone still stood for something. The story unraveled across platforms with terrifying speed. Celebrities reposted it. Activists shared it. Military leaders weighed in. That wasn't a breach of protocol, one retired general tweeted. That was the most honorable thing I've seen in uniform in decades. Elizabeth Hartley's name wasn't mentioned, but people found her anyway. Articles were written, threads were spun, debates started. Was she going to be punished? Would the palace respond? But the palace said nothing. Not right away. No press statement, no press conference. Just silence. And in that silence, the world waited. But the silence wasn't empty. It was respectful, almost sacred. It wasn't the silence of scandal. It was the silence that follows a moment that speaks for itself. People didn't want controversy. They didn't want consequences. They wanted recognition. They wanted to know that somewhere inside the gates, someone had noticed what the rest of the world had felt. But inside the barracks, Elizabeth said nothing either. She returned to duty the next day like nothing had happened. Same hat, same uniform, same stance. And once again, the boy stood across from her. Same hoodie, same salute. The difference now? Everyone else stood with him. The summons came quietly. No fanfare, no announcement. Just a simple message delivered by her commanding officer. Report upstairs. Now. Elizabeth Hartley didn't flinch. She'd been expecting it. In the rigid world she operated in, protocol wasn't a suggestion. It was sacred. And she had broken it. Not by accident, not in hesitation, but in full awareness of what she was doing. She had stepped down for a child. And now, she was ready to face whatever consequences waited behind the door. She changed into her formal uniform. Boots polished, buttons aligned, hat squared with perfection. She didn't rush. She didn't fidget. If she was going to be reprimanded or dismissed, she would face it the same way she'd faced war zones, parades, and screaming tourists, with complete composure. But when she entered the room, she wasn't greeted with anger. She wasn't met with disappointment. There was no tribunal, no disciplinary officer, no lecture. Instead, on the long wooden table, there was only a single sealed envelope. Thick, dark parchment. The royal seal pressed into the wax. Elizabeth approached without a word, picked it up, and broke the seal with the edge of her glove. Inside, the note was written in smooth, deliberate strokes of blue-black ink. No formality, no reprimand, just one sentence. Some protocol is worth breaking. Well done, Charles R. She stared at it for a long moment. Not because she doubted it was real, but because something in her, the part of her that had stayed silent for so many years, finally exhaled. Later that week, she was summoned again. But this time, it wasn't for punishment. It was for a conversation. She was led through quiet halls, far from the usual briefing rooms and guard quarters, and into a private chamber where tradition was born and, occasionally, rewritten. A senior aide met her with a warm smile and a cup of tea. The message was clear. She wasn't being questioned. She was being invited. The royal family had taken notice, not just of her action, but of what it meant. The world hadn't seen a breach of decorum. They had seen a moment of rare humanity, made more powerful by the silence it came from. The palace, in its own dignified way, wanted to respond, not with noise, but with purpose. They asked her to help lead a new initiative. One designed to honor children like Liam, families like his, and soldiers like the ones both of them had lost. It would be called Silent Salutes, a national program built around quiet recognition for military families through tradition, stillness, and remembrance. It wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be advertised on billboards, but it would matter. And they wanted her, Corporal Elizabeth Hartley, to help build it from the ground up. Liam never gave an interview. He never sat in front of a microphone or told his story through a tearful television appearance. But somehow, the world heard him anyway. His story unfolded in quieter ways. Through drawings he left behind, handwritten letters from his schoolmates, grainy clips of him returning each afternoon to the same stone gate outside Buckingham Palace. A few photos emerged of the boy in the blue hoodie, always standing alone, always saluting with the same serious expression, long before anyone knew his name. It was never about going viral for him. It was about someone showing up. And Elizabeth Hartley had done just that. Elizabeth, on the other hand, turned down every request for interviews, documentaries, and profiles. She declined magazine features, declined press appearances, and stayed out of every conversation that tried to name her a hero. She didn't think what she did deserved fame. She believed it deserved silence, the same silence Liam had held all those days when no one was paying attention. So she returned to her post without ceremony. Same red tunic, same polished boots, same silence, and waited for the boy who never missed a day. Only this time, Liam didn't come as a spectator. He arrived in full miniature guard uniform, hand-stitched, officially issued, granted by royal decree. Black boots, tailored red jacket, a scaled-down bearskin hat that sat a little crooked on his head. He didn't carry a weapon, of course, but he carried something heavier, the visible weight of being seen. He walked to the gate, head high, eyes forward, and took his place beside Elizabeth, standing shoulder to shoulder, not as a tourist, but as a symbol, not for attention, but for honor. Tourists didn't push for photos that day. They didn't shout jokes or try to provoke a reaction. They just watched, hushed and unsure, like they had wandered into something sacred. People stepped back. Some wept. Others saluted. For once, the story wasn't being told through trending hashtags or viral sound bites. It was being lived right there, in absolute stillness. No speeches were made. No music played. But the message was unmistakable. He saluted the guard every day. One day, she saluted him back. And in that moment, the country remembered what service really means. Elizabeth Hartley returned to her post as she always had. Head high, boots polished, shoulders square. But something had changed. The crowd no longer treated her like a background fixture or a novelty in uniform. They didn't yell to get her attention. They didn't wave or laugh or push for photos. Instead, they stood back in quiet awe, as if they understood now that stillness could be sacred too. The woman who once seemed untouchable had become unforgettable, not because she moved, but because she chose exactly when to. And at the edge of the courtyard, where routine had once met ritual, Liam stood again. This time, he wasn't in uniform, just his old hoodie. No guards beside him, no fanfare, just a boy with a memory to honor. He raised his hand, slowly, in the same salute he'd given her for months. Elizabeth didn't step down. She didn't return the gesture. But her eyes, those famously unreadable blue eyes, shifted ever so slightly in his direction. It was small, subtle, almost imperceptible. But it was enough, because sometimes the loudest acknowledgement comes in silence. Not all wars are loud. Not all heroes wear stars. And sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do is break formation, just to lift someone smaller than the world allowed. She didn't need recognition. He didn't need words. The moment had already spoken for both of them. In a world that often measures strength by noise, this one step, one glance, one choice proved that real power can live in the quietest places. Have you ever met someone whose quiet strength changed everything? Was she right to break a protocol? Tell us below, and share this story with someone who still believes in silent heroes.